Years ago, I was given the opportunity to see students from 5 New York City performing arts high schools act on a Broadway stage, each doing selections from their previous seasons. A friend was teaching at one of the schools and got a few extra invites to this very big deal for these kids, and I jumped at the chance. I was a theater kid in a fairly small town in Rhode Island, where the head of the program believed, rightly, that everyone who wanted to be involved deserved to be. However, this resulted in people who weren't great ending up on the stage because that's just how the thing goes. And while I think we put on some really good shows during my time there, I had no doubt that what I was going to be seeing was just miles ahead of any of them. And yeah, they were. The scenes ran the gamut, from a dramatic, experimental piece to several songs from West Side Story, but all were hugely impressive, even if you didn't remember that everyone up there was still in high school. 2 of them in particular completely blew me away with their production and performance, and I have no doubt that at least some of those kids are performing on Broadway proper literally while I'm shooting this video right now. So when I compare something to the best high school theater I've ever seen, it's important to know that that's a pretty damn high bar to clear. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week I Review. You can call me a better Tony than the guy that school had, but whatever. And today, I am talking about Sing Street, currently playing off-Broadway at the New York Theater Workshop before what I imagine is the inevitable Broadway run. I was really excited to see and then talk about Sing Street here because this project sits at the intersection of 3 significant interests of this channel: movies, theater, and live musical performance, it being a stage adaptation of John Carney's 2016 rock pseudo-musical film of the same name. I say pseudo-musical in honor of my first-year floormate Evan, who absolutely hated Carney's breakout project once because people called it a musical when it's really just a movie about working musicians. There are no scenes in ones where someone is walking down the sidewalk and spontaneously bursts into thematically relevant song because mere words just aren't enough to express their emotions. People say things like regular humans until it's time to break out the guitar and perform a traditional song like regular humans. It's all very normal, ergo not a real musical. That's a fair but fairly academic criticism, and I still think Once is great. I missed Carney's follow-up Begin Again and never bothered to go back, but after glowing praise for Sing Street from my friend Hubert, I made the effort to seek that one out, and I'm glad I did. I really quite enjoyed it, though that's basically all I remember about it. And I decided to keep it that way before seeing the play. I wanted to go in without preconceived notions about what people should look or sound like. And I didn't want to fixate on the particulars of the adaptation, because those don't really matter. What matters is whether or not the damn thing works. And so this review was written from the perspective of someone who saw, but doesn't remember the movie very well, and will therefore not be making many specific comparisons. Anyways, Sing Street follows the trials and tribulations of a high school band formed exclusively to impress a girl. Our protagonist, Connor, is a guitar-playing guy with a love of music largely inspired by his shut-in older brother, Brendan. They're from a historically well-off family that has fallen on hard times, and one of the cutbacks they made was to take Connor out of his fancy private school and send him to a public one, the Christian Brothers Education Center, Sing Street, spelled S-Y-N-G-E. Connor meets Rafina, a girl 1 year his senior with a much older boyfriend who says she has modeled before and is interested in musicians. He tells her he is one, that he has a band, and that he can put her in their upcoming music video. She agrees, this being 30 years before TikTok came and made literally every moment of teenagers' lives into a music video. But Connor does not actually have a band, nor a song to make a music video for. Conveniently, though, he has just met someone who can help, Darren. And in shockingly short order, they put together an ensemble called Sing Street, S-I-N-G, because puns. And the rest is, well, the play. New York Theater Workshop's production is fascinatingly simple. A large empty space, just a table with chairs in the center and a bed towards the back with someone sleeping as the house opens. A thing I did in my high school production of Death of a Salesman that apparently most folks didn't even notice, but I thought was cool anyway. Along the side walls are benches and instruments, guitars, keys, an electronic drum set. I hadn't really thought about how the music was going to be performed, but this seemed to bode well. As the lights dimmed, an unexpectedly large number of people came on stage, most of them sitting with the instruments. This is the cast, and they are the musicians. Almost everyone is an instrumentalist, whether they are in Sing Street the band or not. They sit by them, ready to play at a moment's notice. These are all hugely talented individuals, and most of them are quite young. The adults in the room are, of course, played by adults, but a lot of scenes are just a bunch of teenagers doing their thing. And seeing that brought me back to my school auditorium, watching my fellow theater kids do their thing up on stage. I wish all casting agents were as committed to age-appropriate actors as Tara Rubin casting was for Sing Street. I talked about this a bit in my Dear Evan Hansen review. Although the current Evan Hansen is actually 16, earlier incarnations, including the one I saw, were not, and the original actor who played Zoe Murphy was something like a decade older than her character. The fact that these people are older affects the way you perceive the characters and what they do, specifically as it relates to things that are objectively dumb. 16-year-olds are, by and large, objectively dumb. And everyone who has been 16 knows that, and everyone who has been 16 and isn't a garbage person understands that. So if a 16-year-old says something dumb, it doesn't matter. But when a person who is clearly old enough to know better spouts a 16-year-old's dumb opinion, your gut reaction isn't, "Aw," it's, "Ugh." But on the other hand, having a cast of mostly kids lends a kind of amateurish vibe to the production. Though in Sing Street's case, it's not just the casting that does that. The book itself, written by Enda Walsh, seems like it was written by a teenager. It is clunky and disjointed. One moment there's a big confrontation between characters, the next things are hunky-dory. Despite a substantially longer runtime than its source material, Sing Street the play just feels like it's missing things. But that's really a function of prioritization. The script gives little moments to these extraneous characters who don't matter to the core drama, and none of them really have clear arcs as much as a series of disconnected milestones that feel entirely unearned. I can think of two people offhand whose absence would have allowed the story to focus on Sing Street, and the play would have been much better for it. But when you get to the musical segments, none of that really matters, because these songs are great, all 80s British new wave type tracks, and they are performed brilliantly by everyone. The singing and instrumentation are all top-notch. And so that aspect is better than any movie version could ever be, because something performed well live is and will always be better than the most masterfully produced record. The only real gripe I had was that I felt they went a bit too far with the drum mixing. Obviously, putting a full-on drum set on stage would have overtaken the sound, so it makes sense that they used an electronic drum set whose volume they could control. But the drums are so quiet that there's a disconnect between what you're seeing the guy do and hearing through the speakers. It definitely takes some of the punch out of their sound, and as an ex-drummer who often focuses on them during concerts, it made me kinda sad. But only kinda. Ultimately, it was just super fun to see these kids rock out and hear those genuinely great songs in a new way. I wasn't singing along because I'd forgotten the words, but you can be damn sure I bopped my head and got into it in every other way. Interestingly, it turns out that the show is a bit more musical-like than the film. Although most of the show's songs are either quote-unquote real songs, facsimiles of real songs that they clearly couldn't get the rights to, or Sing Street's songs, some of them get recontextualized here to increase the dramatic meaning. I'm thinking particularly of the way they stage Girls against the dissolution of the family unit instead of just as a song that the band plays at an event. It is a hard-hitting sequence that really takes advantage of the space and the art form. One of theater's unique strengths is its ability to play out multiple scenes simultaneously and keep them all in the audience's view through their entirety. When Sing Street does this, it is at its strongest. Additionally, there are actual moments where the characters break into song or sound because words just aren't enough to express the emotions, and they hit in a way that the drama rarely does. Part of the show's problem is the stage itself. As I said, it's pretty sparse, but I didn't mention the back wall, which is a projection screen. You'd think that that would be super important, but I didn't mention it because it is massively underutilized, only really ever showing water. This is relevant sometimes because a few scenes take place by there, but it could and should have done so much more. Like, in a movie, you see the setting and ever-changing clothing, and you understand where and when you are. On a stage, you can't do that unless you're willing to have big set changes or what have you. And when a stage is as empty as this one, those indications are missing. Even if you take the table away, it's still sometimes hard to know where a scene takes place, let alone when in the story's timeline. Unless someone says it out loud, who knows? They could have done this with the projection screen using images to set a time and place. It would be a great way to keep the audience oriented, but they didn't do that. And as I watched and thought about all of this, I kind of chalked it up to the kids' inexperience. I know that in reality there are decades of talent behind Sing Street, but you can't tell. If I had seen this exact production in a different theater, I would have genuinely thought that it was written and directed by the kids it stars. And while that's not really a compliment, it is not nearly as damning as you'd think. Because in that light, the show takes on a beautiful new meaning as you watch kids put on a play about them putting together a band. And they make up for damn near every problem they have with a sheer commitment to the material. A bunch of kids decided that they were going to do a thing, and they made it happen. And that's wonderful. And even if I know that that's not really the case, I want to believe it. So I will. Good job, kids. 7.9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hamry and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, @BlasianFMA, and Magnolia Denton. If you like this video, great. If not, I'm sorry. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week.